except hopefully their defense isn't nearly as good. I don't think it is. They give up, like I said, 80 points to most of the teams they play. So we should be able to get into the lane. Obviously, James Palmer is key here, along with Copeland and maybe even Roby if he can get in there. But that should play into our strengths, because even though we've tried to shoot a lot of threes this year, we have not shot well. And hopefully James Palmer can not take a lot of threes and instead go off from two and get a lot of fouls in there. And speaking of fouls, their intense defensive scheme tends to make them foul more often, so hopefully we'll have a good night from the free throw line, which it seems like we've been struggling with a little bit, but we should be fine. Free throws will always be good, even if we're not shooting a great percentage. And most of that is from H.H. Dimes, who always does a scouting report on the future opponent for the Huskers and does a great job with it. For my HHCC prediction, I have the Huskers winning this one 81-69. I saw a lot of the good teams that Illinois has played has scored in the 80s. We seem like a medium level scoring team, and I think that we should be just good enough to kind of pull away with this one, hopefully before the end, but maybe it'll take all game. Obviously, thinking back to last year, I'm not exactly sure how many people they return, but Illinois caused us big problems last year. James Palmer had to hit a 3 at the very end of the game, buzzer beater, to beat them at home the first time, even though they weren't very good, and we fell to them in our only loss of the last 10 regular season games of the season last year, and it was not pretty. So hopefully we'll be able to do better against their press and not get so many turnovers, and just play our game, especially at home, and take them and move on to Minnesota. The last thing I wanted to talk about was it's related to how we were talking about how James Palmer should or shouldn't be taking so many shots, and what his role on the team is compared to other guys like Roby. And I think it really came to a head on Sunday. So for anybody who was there Sunday, like I said earlier, we kind of are close enough to see things, and so much of what we see from Miles when he's getting mad at somebody, he's either getting mad at a freshman or he's getting mad at Roby. For the last 3 years, we've seen that. And it was a really big change to see what we saw on Sunday. So I think James Palmer drove in, or he didn't run some sort of play in the first half, and he took a shot too early, and Miles had him come over and yelled at him and said, "Come on." And then right after that, I don't remember exactly what happened. Palmer did something else and kind of broke off and had a mistake, and Miles immediately took him out of the game, which I think is a huge change just from what I've seen from the coaching and what has been going on for the last few years. So I think that's really interesting. I think a lot of people have been saying that they thought Palmer's taking too many threes, he's trying to take over games, and I think that's something that Miles may have seen too. But there's also a very good article on The Athletic, which is a new subscription-based sports writing place, and they really did an in-depth article. It was by, C.J. Moore, and it was written about the in between the Missouri State and Texas Tech game, and it just took you through kind of what Miles' day was like. And one of the things they said, he called out Roby and Palmer for mostly playing lazy defense, not getting down in a stance, as you see Miles is always doing. I mean, Miles is doing it. Shouldn't everybody on the court be able to do it? And then Roby, he's seen a big problem in getting offensive rebounds and tip-ins, which is interesting. I don't remember if he did better on Sunday or Monday night, or not Sunday, Saturday or Sunday or Monday night. And so that might be something interesting to watch for. He had only had one through the first 5 games, and Miles thought he should have one per half. He also was telling Palmer that he needed to stop settling for jumpers and start to drive to the basket. And obviously that got messed up in the Texas Tech game by getting 2 ridiculous charges at the beginning of the game, and he started settling for jumpers more. But we'll have to be keeping our eye on that throughout the season. Don't want to give away the whole article. That's not fair to him. So, yeah, I think it could be really interesting, especially bringing it back to Illinois, maybe not as good of a team. They really seemed on Saturday against Western Illinois to be working on playing through their offense, getting their plays right, and that was probably a good strategy for them. And Clemson, James Palmer kind of took over. We really needed him. He finally had a really good game for us. So it's good to see that we're trying to work on things and do things for better opponents in our worse opponents' games, and then we kind of go free run and sometimes use those, but not always in the better games. And it's just good to see that we're working on stuff. Finally, another thing that Miles said more recently, I think it was Tuesday, or maybe it was a little later than that, but Miles said that he thought that Roby would return for his senior season. Some said that he is probably just setting him up for not putting a lot of pressure on him, and this is his last year. I kind of agree with that. I don't think Miles knows at all whether that's true or not, and I think that Miles, or these things can just change so quickly. I've seen in the NBA, whenever somebody says, oh, I'm signing with this person before the season, and then 6 months later they can't sign, and then 6 months later, oh, I'm decommitting. Not decommitting, that's a college thing, and that happens all the time too. You just never know. Things can change so much. He could just have a great end of the season and score 15 points a game, and he'll be a top first round draft pick, and he'll be gone, probably. I mean, he could choose to say, obviously, but I think that that's probably false hope at this point. At least don't put too much stock into it, and we will see at the end of the season. So that's all I have for you guys. Hopefully we can get that win against Illinois and continue on against Minnesota. I'm not sure when we'll have another one out, but Christmas break is coming soon, so we should be able to really bring you guys content during that. And again, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Risky Roads Pod. Maybe there are some different capitals on each one of those, but you should find it if you search that. And remember, even though we got a good win against Clemson, we have still never won a tournament game. And until we do, we are still Risky Roads.
Let's go Big Red.
Oh, I got posted with Jordy, man. Risky Roads.
We're going to change this podcast to normal if we ever get the tournament win.
Get ready to change their name.